Hello and welcome to Off My Shelves, and this is a video that hasn't been requested by many people, but there is one subscriber to the channel who goes by the name of Zoom or Dennis, and he has been a lovely supporter and commented favourably on all the videos, and he has been keen to have a bit of a shelf tour. So this pretty much is at his request only really, but it'd be nice to kind of go through, I suppose, and have on the channel anyway, because it does seem to be a thing the channels looking at comic books generally have. So this is my shelf tour, so we'll get underway. Now, I've limited my own shelf space. I haven't got a great deal, I haven't got a gigantic collection by any stretch of imagination, and I've limited it because I specifically only want things that I'm going to read multiple times and that I really love and want on my shelves forever. Like many people, my collection here changes regularly because I will read something that I maybe bought on a punt or something and it hasn't panned out, so I'll sell it. Or I'll realise there's something after the second read isn't for me and I'll sell it. I really don't see a reason in buying comics and just having them sitting on my shelf for ages not being read really. I haven't got the space, for one thing. I live in quite a small terraced house in South Wales and I haven't got the space and I haven't got the finances to keep growing and growing a collection, because I rely sometimes on selling bits to then pay for newer bits. I've got two of these K-Lax shelves from IKEA, one over one side of the room and one over another, and then I've got a small shelf which seems to be housing my oversized books and my manga collection, which I'm getting a little bit into manga at the moment, so that is going to keep growing, I think, unfortunately for me, because it means that I spend more money and lose more space, but I'll still enjoy them nonetheless. They are separated up into publishers for the most part, but then there isn't an exact rule really. I'm not one of these guys who have got severe OCD, not that that's a bad thing, in terms of organising the collection. I've put them in some sort of order that I understand. You might not understand it, but I do, and it is pretty much ordered by publisher and then by series within the publisher or by author within the publisher. Differs depending on what really I prefer. So starting here are the Marvel Omnibuses, and starting with Brian Michael Bendis' New Avengers Volume 1. Where is Volume 2? Who knows? I love New Avengers, and this actually is very important to me because this was the first omnibus that I ever had. This was literally the very first Marvel omnibus and first large-scale omnibus that I ever owned. I started collecting in 2009. So anyway, the second Marvel Omnibus is Spider-Man by Miles Morales, the Ultimate Spider-Man, and we've got an overview of that on the channel. Then Spider-Man Miles Morales, which continues that on. The Ultimates by Mark Millar and Brian Hitch. Ultimate Spider-Man by Brian Michael Bendis and Mark Bagley, and that is getting a reprint later on this year, but I was kind of fearful actually that they would do a new wraparound cover for this, and normally I like a wraparound cover, but this one for some reason I really like the red cover with the silver embossed writing underneath. I really like that a lot, and I thought I'll get this now because the gentleman selling it on a Facebook group was selling it for pretty much the same price as it would be when it's coming out as a new omnibus later on this year, so I didn't really pay over the odds. And I certainly still paid under cover price, which is always a key thing for me. I never really tend to pay over cover price for anything because I don't think I should. And yeah, so Uncanny X-Force by Rick Remender, followed by Uncanny Avengers. They are part of the same series really. And New Avengers by Grant Morrison, which again we've got an overview. X-Men The Dark Phoenix Saga, Wolverine Volume 1, Astonishing X-Men by Joss Whedon and John Cassidy. Captain America Volume 1 by Ed Brubaker, Daredevil by Frank Miller and Klaus Janson, and then The Companion by Frank Miller and loads of others like David Mazzucchelli. These recent kind of purchases, like a lot of my Marvel omnibuses are. I mainly didn't really collect Marvel in omnibus form until fairly recently really. Yeah, I don't know why that was. I just preferred the absolute formats and the library editions and the oversized formats really. And cost as well was a big thing. But either way, the Omnibus by Matt Fraction and David Aja, Hawkeye. Absolute Carnage, followed by Venom Volume 1 and 2 oversized hardcovers. And so Absolute Carnage is where the omnibuses end for now. Obviously, like most people in this business, I've got loads on pre-order and things like that. But following the Marvel omnibuses are the Marvel deluxe hardcovers. And so you've got Venom, as I said, then you've got Thanos by Donny Cates. Avengers Axis, which again follows on from Uncanny Avengers, the Rick Remender story. Then Vision deluxe hardcover, volumes 1 to 5 of Mark Waid's Daredevil run. The 25th anniversary or edition of Marvels. House of X, Powers of 10, oversized hardcover, followed by X of Swords, and then Jonathan Hickman's Avengers run in oversized hardback format. And for those of you who can't afford and who have missed out on the omnibuses, the oversized hardcovers are probably the best and cheapest way to get into the Jonathan Hickman universe, really. The only difference being, obviously, in the omnibus form, they mapped out very well and they kind of laid out so everything is kind of chronologically in order, whereas you have to do that yourself to a certain extent. After that, you've got Oz by Scotty Young. I've only got volume 1 of that, and that is pretty much something I read to my daughters often. I haven't gone further with that story, and typically if my daughters didn't like it, it wouldn't be here really, because I loved the art, but the story was a bit nah, you know, it was okay. And then you've got the standard edition hardcovers of Thor, The God of Thunder by Jason Aaron, volumes 1 and 2, essentially the God Butcher storyline. Now I went further with that digitally, and now I'm just kind of biding my time to wait for the omnibus really. And then you've got the gallery edition of God Loves Man Kills, which for Phil at Phil's Nerdyverse is snugly fitted into the K-Lax shelving, but if you go close to the edges where the shelf doesn't sag, it is a bit tight. So certainly be wary that if you've got a very straight shelf with no bowing in it, you might struggle fitting it on there. I typically go down and then across as well, which probably will irritate some people, but that's the way I do it. So next we come along the IDW stuff, and pretty much with the IDW stuff all I've got really is Turtles and one Usagi Yojimbo, which is in a different place. And so you've got volumes 1 to 12 at the moment of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles series, the complete collections by IDW, and these books are some of my favourite really. Lockdown really give me time to concentrate on getting all of the collection of these books sorted and getting them in place, because the Turtles story was something that took me by surprise really. I'd grown up loving and adoring the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. They were a real childhood influence and massive thing in my life really when I was a kid, but I never visited the comics. And so when I did visit the comics, I bought volume 1 of the Ultimate Collections, which is next along the line, and loved that. And then after I finished that series, the original runs, I decided to get into the IDW stuff, and again I was blown away by the quality of the story and pacing of the story and the art and everything. If you haven't ever read Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, then get into the IDW stuff. Even if you have any interest in comics at all really, the IDW collection line is really superb comics on every level. The Ultimate Collection, I would agree, is the same, but the storytelling does flag a little bit in comparison to the modern stuff, but it's still really well worth anyone's time. And the oversized nature of these books is great. They're around about the same size as a library edition from Dark Horse, but they're the Ultimate Collections by IDW, and we've got a video overview of all of those. Next along the lines is Fables Deluxe Edition, and so we come to the Vertigo lines now. Fables Deluxe Edition 1, I only picked that up the other day because it was £5, pretty much brand new, and I haven't read Fables ever, so I got that. Who knows if it'll lead to the other volumes, but that's one I've still yet to read. 100 Bullets by Brian Azzarello, the deluxe editions. I was going to get the omnibus, but to be honest, I prefer reading generally in deluxe format just because it's more easy to handle really. And the next along the line is Sheriff of Babylon by Tom King, and that's another great book as well. The omnibus version of Why the Last Man, which is a beast of an omnibus. And Why the Last Man, I initially had this in the trade paperback form for many years, and then decided, right, what I'm going to do is sell it and buy the oversized hardcovers. So I sold them, went to buy the oversized hardcovers, and just couldn't find them for ages. And then just time went away from me, and I ended up picking up this for relatively cheap, really, off a second-hand seller on Facebook. And yeah, it's a great series, Why the Last Man. So Preacher, the standard edition of hardbacks, book 1. Then you've got We 3 by Grant Morrison and Frank Quietly in paperback form, and this is Frank Quietly and Grant Morrison at their best, really. And then the trade paperbacks of Sweet Tooth, volumes 1 to 6. And then we start with the Image comic books, Little Bird, The Flight for Elder's Hope. If you haven't read this, spectacular book. And then another Image book that I don't hear talked about half as much as it should be is Black Magic by Greg Rucka. Now Greg Rucka is a spectacular writer, and you'll see a few of his books throughout here, but the artwork as well by Nicola Scott is really top notch. Some of the best artwork you get from Image Comics, really. And it's a story about witchcraft, and yeah, well worth picking up that. Then you've got the oversized Private Eye by Brian K. Vaughan again, and one of my absolute favourite artists, Macros Martin. And yeah, this is just great. Came off the back of the Panel Syndicate website, and I read that digitally in a pay what you want format, and they actually got on Panel Syndicate now an Ed Brubaker and Martin short story, which is really good. So check out Panel Syndicate to read those online, and hopefully you get a paper version soon, a printed version rather. We Stand Guard again by Brian K. Vaughan. This is very much the Brian K. Vaughan section. Then Paper Girls, the deluxe hardbacks, volumes 1, 2 and 3, again by Brian K. Vaughan and Cliff Chang. Then Saga, volumes 1, 2 and 3 by Brian K. Vaughan and Fiona Staples. Then the Ed Brubaker section, the Fade Out, the deluxe edition, Kill or Be Killed by Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips. Most of these are all Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips, really. Cruel Summer, and then Criminal Deluxe Editions Volume 1, 2 and 3. Then Reckless Book 1 and Pulp. And I have got the paperback versions of Fatale. Now the reason why I haven't upgraded from the paperback version is quite simply because I forgot to get them when they came out. Then we've got the Walking Dead Deluxe Editions Volumes 1 to 10, missing 8 at the moment. I've just been upgrading, I sold my compendiums, and I've just been rebuying the Walking Dead series in hardback format, really. And then you've got the Image Fatale series by Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips, volumes 1 to 5. And then 2 random Image books, Southern Bastards and Manifest Destiny. Both of these are very good, and I haven't wanted to sell them, but I haven't wanted to upgrade or get further volumes either. So what I'm probably doing, it subconsciously, is going to reread them a couple more times and see if I want to actually keep them or not. Then you've got some random issues of Ex Machina by Brian K. Vaughan. Then you've got the paperbacks of League of Extraordinary Gentlemen by Alan Moore and Kevin O'Neill, volume 1, 2, and Black Dossier. Then you've got the Century volumes in paperback form, 1910, 1969 and 2009. And a hardback of Heart of Ice, which was again the short series by looking at Nemo's Daughter from Hell, is by Alan Moore and Eddie Campbell, and is an amazing book on every level. But there's a wonderful hardback version of this that I always keep an eye on, but because I took this book away with me on pretty much one of the best holidays I've ever been on, and I can remember reading this, you know, in various points of that holiday, and it really stokes memories of that holiday as well as being a great book. So I struggle upgrading when there's a bit of a sentimental value attached to the books, which we'll come back to in a second. And then you've got Scott Pilgrim volume 1 to 6, the hardback colour versions, and a Mouse. And I was going to get Mouse by Art Spiegelman in hardback format, but I really liked the format and the presentation of the slipcase edition, because they 2 paperback books in a slipcase with a few little extra bits in it. But I really liked the style and the format of it, to be honest, so I got this version instead of the hardback. And I think I only paid about £10 for it, which was a bargain. Then you've got David Lapham's Stray Bullets, the oversized hardbacks, volumes 1 to 3. I've read more of that series in digital format, but I struggle kind of getting anything less than this oversized hardback because it is such a wonderful format for his work, and this is one of the most underrated crime series, I think, out there today. It really is. If you haven't read Stray Bullets, then get on it. And this is a weird one. I haven't got many 2000 AD books, but this one I bought ages ago just because I liked the look of the artwork, and it's called Brass Sun, Wheel of the Worlds. Then you've got one of the stars of my collection, really, one of the best and greatest books that I've ever been privileged enough to read, Akira by Otomo, and in there contains volumes 1 to 6 of Akira, plus a book all about the art of Akira, and I'm sure we'll get to an in-depth look at that. Then the last cube on this shelf has a stack of books that I'm about to sell, and also the Incal Logical Mix and Persepolis, I can never know how to pronounce that. So I'm off the Snorlax beanbag now and onto my old granny rocking chair that I used to read most of my books in. But yeah, this is the second of the K-Lax shelves that I've got going on. And as you can see, this is pretty much where I've got most of the DC stuff. So on the top shelf, yeah, the Absolutes, starting with Absolute Kingdom Come, then All-Star Superman, Superman for Tomorrow, and the 2 Absolute versions of Wonder Woman by Brian Azzarello. Then the Tim Sale and Jeff Loeb saga of Batman. I started with The Haunted Knight, which is 3 individual issues, and then Catwoman When in Rome. Then The Long Halloween, and then Dark Victory. And it always does my head. Now, Dark Victory doesn't seem to get as much love as Long Halloween, but for me, I prefer Dark Victory to Long Halloween, but each their own. Then on to Ronin, which we've got an overview on the channel, and Absolute Batman Year 1 by Frank Miller. Then the Absolute Killing Joke, Volume 1 and Volume 2 of Absolute Swamp Thing by Alan Moore. Volume 1 and Volume 2 of The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen by Alan Moore and Kevin O'Neill. Then Absolute Watchmen, Absolute V for Vendetta, obviously both by Alan Moore with different artists, Dave Gibbon on Watchmen, David Lloyd on the V for Vendetta. Then the 15th anniversary edition of Absolute New Frontier by Darwin Cook. And this is a great book if anyone's ever read this. It's a lovely texture and a lovely cover to the book, and the story and the art in it is really good on every level. Then we got Absolute Planetary, which we've got an overview on the channel for, and Absolute Transmetropolitan Volume 1 and Volume 2. Cannot find Volume 3 at all, doing my head in, but hopefully it'll turn up at some point. Then Absolute Authority Volume 1 and Absolute Authority Volume 2. And that is pretty much all the Absolutes, and apart from finishing off the Swamp Thing line and finishing off the Transmetropolitan line and possibly Absolute Black Mirror by Scott Snyder, there's not really any other Absolutes currently that I'm after. Then we go on to the DC deluxe editions really, and magazine style format ones, and these are lumped together in different ways, starting off with Wonder Woman Dead Earth, then Wonder Woman Volume 1 and Volume 2 of the Rebirth Deluxe editions by Greg Rucka. Then Superman Secret Identity by Kurt Busiek, I think, is it? And Batman the Omnibus Volume 1, 2 and 3. 3 is actually not there, that's just the dust jacket because I'm reading 3 at the moment, and I'll be doing a video on Volumes 1, 2 and 3 of the Grant Morrison run fairly shortly. Then I've got Batman The Dark Knight Returns. Now I got this instead of the Absolute version just because I really dislike The Dark Knight Strikes Again, and as that forms the majority of the Absolute Dark Knight edition really, I didn't see much point in getting it. If they ever released Absolute Dark Knight on its own, like Killing Joke or like Batman Year 1, then I'd be up for getting it, but it's really pointless having a gigantic book where more than 50% of it you know you don't like and you know you're not going to read it again, because Dark Knight Strikes Again was terrible. I thought it was really poor. Then we come back down below then, and we've got Batman Detective Comics Rebirth Collection, the deluxe editions, Volume 1 to 4, the James Tynion run. Then Batman Year 100 and Other Tales by Paul Pope. Then the deluxe edition of Batman Ego by Darwin Cook. Then Batman Gothic by Grant Morrison. Batman by Brian Azzarello and Edward Risso, and that's a collection of different stories that they've done over many years, including Broken City and a few others. Then Batman Damned, which is another Brian Azzarello book, and Dark Knight's Metal and Dark Knight's Death Metal, the deluxe editions by Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo. Then snuck away in between these is I did have a massive collection of single issues. For a long time I collected single issues, but I got rid of pretty much all of them really and started to focus on collected editions, just because I found myself constantly doubling up, constantly buying the single issues and then upgrading them later on, and it just did my head. Now I was just spending so much money. Now and again you can get the single issues and sell them and upgrade and not spend any money, but now and again it doesn't quite work out like that. But these editions are of Batman The Last Night on Earth, and then next to that the Batman Who Laughs by Jock and Scott Snyder, and that's the start of the standard size edition hardbacks for DC. And then we've got volumes 1 to 10 of the Batman run by Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo. Now I know fully that there's an omnibus out and a volume 2 coming, but this is another set of books that I've got a lot of sentimental value for. A lot of these were bought for me by other people, and a lot of them have been on my shelf and in my collection for quite some time. And even though I would enjoy having the artwork slightly oversized and having it all in one nice package of the omnibus, I still can't really see my shelves without them, and I don't want to double up that much. So for the moment I won't be upgrading, and I'll just keep those little standard hardback sizes and just keep enjoying the run from there. But then you've got Batman Black Mirror, which is one of the ones that I may upgrade to the Absolute editions, because I've been keeping my eye on that, and I missed one recently in a Forbidden Planet sale. Then the standard edition of Mr. Miracle by Tom King. This came out as a direct market exclusive, I think, and I just picked it up because I heard good things about it, and at the time it was the only hardback version out in the market, and so I picked it up and read it and really enjoyed it, to be fair. I haven't reread it as yet, but I know there's a deluxe edition of this out. Then next is a very old and weathered copy of Identity Crisis, and then the individual issues of Cosmic Odyssey by Jim Starlin and Mike Mignola. Then you've got an old copy of Man of Steel by John Byrne, and a little collection then of the Grant Morrison JLA run. Then I got a trade paperback version of Hush by Jim Lee and Jeff Loeb, and I haven't upgraded to the Absolute edition yet, because again it really wasn't an essential story for me. Hush, it was okay. Batman Cult though is one of my favourite Batman books. It's really well out there and crazy artwork and a wonderful story actually. It's all about the cult and Deacon Blackfire breaking the Batman and making him part of a cult and making him do his bidding. It's really well done, and the artwork by Bernie Wrightson is fabulous. So if this ever came out in a big hardback format, I'd definitely be picking that up. And speaking about big hardback formats, the next on the line here is volumes 1 to 4 of Gotham Central. Now they've got obviously hardback versions and they've got an omnibus. Either way, I haven't really got the enthusiasm for the series as much as others. I love volume 1 and volume 2, but then volume 3 and 4 on the artwork and the story to a certain extent really dragged for me a bit. Then we start with the Dark Horse comics, which are pretty much my favourite really. I genuinely think that the Absolutes and the stories that I've got in Absolute versions and every comic book that I have from Dark Horse are my favourites, to be fair. And starting with the smaller standard sized hardbacks of, and I got another one of these to get, which is the Living Dead, I think, but either way I keep forgetting to pick it up. But these are smaller hardback kind of graphic novel size stories by Mike Mignola, and then by a guest artist on each one. And then after that you've got the library editions of Hellboy, volumes 1 to 6, and then obviously volume 7 or Hellboy in Hell. Stunning books. If I were to ever recommend one book more than anything other, it would be Hellboy, without a shadow of a doubt. Then you've got Black Sad, which is a great anthropomorphic detective story. And next to it here, shoved in randomly, although it's not published by Dark Horse, I've clubbed most of my Usagi Yojimbo stories together, and so it gets a little confusing publisher wise, but I'd rather have all the Usagis together than separate them everywhere else out really. And so you've got Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles hardback edition of the crossover that IDW put out there, and this is interesting because it's actually the Turtles from the IDW modern line, and so it's the first Usagi story that's actually looking at Usagi Yojimbo meeting the new version of the Turtles that are reincarnated, and the Turtles that in their world Michelangelo speaks Japanese and things like that. If you've never read the IDW collections, that's probably all sounds a bit confusing, but it's the first one that Usagi has met them, and not the original Eastman and Laird Turtles, but it's a really good story. Then Usagi Yojimbo Legends in trade paperback form. This is spin-offs of Usagi Yojimbo, and so I didn't mention this in a video that I've looked at the saga editions overall, but this collects Space Usagi, Senso and a few other non-canonical issues really. Then volumes 1 to 8 of the Usagi Yojimbo series, volumes 2 to 8 being the limited edition hardcovers, and then volume 1 being a custom bound Usagi Yojimbo Saga 1 that I did because I struggled getting Saga volume 1 in hardback form, and I wanted them in hardback form, but then also I didn't want to just copy the other ones because I knew it'd always stand out as a copy if I did a copy, so I thought I'd do something interesting with it and something unique with it. Then the hardback versions of Usagi Yojimbo, the Fantagraphics series, volume 1 and 2 in a slipcase, and the covers of 35 years of covers of Usagi Yojimbo stuck in the side there. There's also another Usagi Yojimbo down here, but this is my daughter's copy, and she just kind of has put it there, but it's not in amongst all the rest of it because normally it's up in her bedroom anyway. Then further down we've got more Dark Horse Library editions. We've got Harrow County volume 1 to 4 by Cullen Bunn and Tyler Crook, which is a great series that I'm reading at the moment really, and yeah, enjoying massively. Then you've got Black Hammer volume 1 and 2 library editions, followed by The World of Black Hammer volume 1 and 2, and they are a series by Jeff Lemire. Then you've got the library editions of The Umbrella Academy by Gerald Way and Gabrielle Barr, and Big Damn Sin City by Frank Miller, which is an amazing book. I mean, it's the most beastly library edition, because even though it's not called the library edition, it is the same size and same scale, but the thickness of it is ridiculous in comparison to the old one, but it is a beautiful book, fair play. And then Fear Agent volume 1 and 2 library editions from Dark Horse. Then you've got a few other smaller standard size hardbacks. This is a series that you don't hear much of, that hopefully I'll get a chance to do a bit of a look at some point because I really love this. This is Francesco Francavilla and the Black Beetle. One collects I think about 5 issues of the series, and then this collects almost like a couple of standalone issues really. I'm not sure how the second volume worked in single issue or whether they came out just like this. But either way, these are great comics. The artwork in them is fabulous and they're quite pulpy and noir, and Francisco Francavilla's artwork is just stunning, obviously. Then I've got this random book that I picked up just because I really enjoyed the artwork on some of the short stories in here, but it's The Book of the Dead by Dark Horse, and it's a collection of different short horror-based stories by different artists and creators that are familiar to a lot of Dark Horse readers like Mike Mignola. Then we go into Fantagraphic books, starting with the hardback version of Safe Area Goranzi. Never know how to pronounce that, oh no idea, but this is a special edition and an ex-library edition really, but Joe Sacco's artwork is something to behold really, and that's a great book. And then the Eternaut, which packaging wise is one of the best packaged and kind of presented books you're going to find. It comes in this cardboard slipcase, and then on the side then you've got this amazing kind of open panel into the centre. It's a stunning book, and it's really kind of 1950s sci-fi, but I was well impressed by this book, and the presentation of it is phenomenal. And talking about good presentation, Fantagraphics seem to be full of good presentation. Streets of Paris, Streets of Murder, the complete graphic noir by Manchette and Tardy. Now Tardy is a French artist that I've been kind of eyeing up for a while. He does a load of different books. Now most famously, as you see at the back, he does The Prisoner of War in Stalag 11B series, which I think is probably his most well known, but I really wanted to get into Tardy's artwork, and because I love crime fiction and crime noir so much, this was the perfect entrance really, and I certainly will be planning on getting more. And this slipcase box set of both of these is really well worth anyone's time, because they collect, I think they collect 4 stories overall. Each book collected 2 stories, 2 crime thriller stories, and yeah, they're well worth a look in. And then you've got Mort Cinder, with the artwork being The Bigger Straw here by Alberto Brezia, and the artwork in this is just absolutely phenomenal. That's why what really drew me in is the quality of the artwork is unbelievable in here. But yeah, we'll have a look more at that in depth another time. Then you've got Jason, I Killed Adolf Hitler, and My Favourite Thing's a Monster by Emil Ferris. Underwater Welder by Jeff Lemire, and Underwater Welder is the point where we go into the top shelf section, which lasts all of 2 books, being Underwater Welder and then Wizzywake by Ed Pisco, which is pretty much the first independent book that he put out there really, I think. And then we go into the second section with Sailor Twain, and then Box Brown's books being Andre the Giant, Tetris and Cannabis. Out of those 3, if you're going to look into Box Brown Row, Tetris is a phenomenal story. The other 2 have highlights and lowlights, but in general the most concise and interesting one is Tetris, I think. Then Seconds by Brian Lee O'Malley, the same author as Scott Pilgrim. Then Best of Enemies, which is a book that I'll definitely be looking at on the channel soon because I love this so much. This is by David B. and Jean-Pierre Filou, and these were exceptionally well drawn and well paced stories. They're basically like little history books of the connections between the Middle Eastern Muslim world and the American kind of government over the years, from the early Buccaneer days in the 1700s and the 1800s right the way through to modern day. And so there's 3 volumes of those, and they're really great. What I should have said as well is the Box Brown and the Best of Enemies and Seconds all start the Self-Made Hero publishing line really, and Self-Made Hero publishes a lot of stuff out of Britain, I think, but they also publish this, a graphic novel version of Victor Hugo's The Man Who Laughs, and this is a fabulous book as well, and all based around the guy who would inspire the Joker eventually, even though this has nothing to do with that character, but visually the character inspired the Joker. Then after that you've got Adrian Tomei's new book, The Loneliness of the Long Distance Cartoonist, which is great, and the first Adrian Tomei book I read actually, and I'm going to certainly look up many more by him. Then Now with the Brown by Glyn Dillon. Daniel Klaus then comes in with Patience and with Wilson, and then slotted in between that is Brian Talbot's Tale of One Bad Rat. Then the Encyclopedia of Early Earth by Elizabeth Greenberg, and that's published by Jonathan Cape as well, who also publishes the next Sappho book, which is Footnotes of Gaza. And also by Stephen Collins, The Gigantic Beard That Was Evil, which is great, and the artwork in that is phenomenal. Epileptic then by David B., who was the same artist who did Best of Enemies, and that is a biography to a certain degree of his life and growing up with his brother who had epilepsy. Then The Property, and finishing off with Pyongyang, which is a look into North Korea, and this is great, and I got to pick up a few more by this guy, by Guy Delis, Guy. And then that brings us to the last little shelving area. This big shelf space for you is reserved for the books that don't fit on the K-Lac shelves, namely the Marvel books here by Ed Pisco, which are amazing books, and I know as well these are released in an omnibus version, but for my money, because of the size and scale of these and the quality of these books, I think these would be more superior to the omnibus version in all honesty. Then Silver Surfer Black in the Treasury edition as well by Donny Cates. Then we've got Hip Hop Family Tree volumes 1 to 4, 2 in each slipcase really. Then Grass Cutter, which is probably one of my favourite books, and we've got an overview of all of these 4 coming up actually, because Parker, the Martini edition by Darwin Cook, is also got an overview of the channel, and so you can look more in depth at them. Then we've got a little manga section, and this is the most burgeoning part of the collection really, because I didn't really much get into manga. I read some online and read bits of Dragon Ball Z and Dragon Ball and lots of other little bits of manga, but nothing really took me until I read Pluto. And so here you got Pluto by Naoki Urasawa, and it's volumes 1 to 8, and that is pretty much one of the most amazing stories I've ever read, and the fact that it's in manga form is irrelevant really. It's such a good story. I really liked it a lot, and so when I finished reading Pluto, I then instantly started picking up the Ultimate editions of the 20th Century Boys story, so volumes 1 to 10 here, same author, Urasawa, and these are great books as well. He is just such a great drawer and such a great storyteller that I can't even begin to explain to you. His stories are so dense with plot as well that it's hard to explain it, but when you're reading it they flow effortlessly and you don't really get that confused when reading them at all. At least I didn't anyway. And volume 11 is coming out pretty much this week, and so that should be here soon. Then you've got the Vinland Saga, volumes 1 to 4, and this is by Ikimara, and it's just a phenomenal series. The hardback versions are a little hard to come by, but I think they collect either 1.5 or 2 of the little kind of tankobon or whatever they called mangas. But I started reading this, I picked up volume 1, I instantly fell in love with the Vinland Saga series, and I got volumes 5, 6 and 7 on order currently, so they'll be here because this will definitely be finished out. I think there's 11 issues altogether. Then Monster here, which is another series by Urasawa. I only just started collecting them, but I think there's 9 volumes of the Ultimate Collection. I haven't read those yet. I want to finish and reread 20th Century Boys before I delve into another Urasawa series. Then you've got volumes 1 and 2 of Mermaid Saga, which have just come out and which we'll be doing an overview on the channel very soon. The box set of Legend of Zelda manga, and this contains 5 hardback versions of the Legend of Zelda manga series, and then finally the Full Metal edition of Full Metal Alchemist. I picked this up just because I really enjoyed the art and I thought I'd give it a try, and I really loved the presentation of the hardback format, and this I've already pre-ordered and got on order. I think volumes 2 to 5 of this now, because when this ended I was like, I want more of that because it was very good indeed. And that, as we say, is that. That is basically everything I've got on my shelves, and so that's a little shelf tour. So I hope you've enjoyed having a look through the books in the collection here, and as ever I will catch you on the next one. Thank you very much for watching.